music is really comforting me. Yeah. Just makes me feel good.
I am very nervous about the Massey Hall gig. I have a feeling that a lot of people are coming to kind of say goodbye and see the band and John one last time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Spirit of the West.
Somebody said, well, you get to watch Courage, so how fantastic is that? How often do you witness Courage?
Planning for the best and bracing for the worst.
When we look at the MRI scan, there have been some progressive changes over the course of particularly the last year or two.
I just can't get over how courageous he is to go out there every night, you know, with the potential of, you know, a train wreck.
You look at what he can't do and you know, things he can't tell me, but he's given me so much, so.
These are the instructions you should follow should I die. Toss my ashes in the ocean, throw them hard and overhand. If the wind kicks up and blows them back towards the land, it's not a sign, it's just the wind. So brush me off, then try again. Here's a short list, just 2 songs that I demand be played. The whole of the moon will light my way. Somewhere near the middle, Ben Heppner sings Nessun Dorma, and when he hits the high C, raise a cheer. Or talk right through, shed a tear. It's up to you, not me, to carry on.
Are you serious about that? Are those instructions in that song for real, or are they for fun?
I would say yes.
Yes, for real. Those are real instructions.
Yes. No. For me, it's real. And when I die, which I would like to have those songs for me to be. Yeah.
I want to go out with a bang, not a whimper. I don't think that after all of these years of proud road warriorship that we should just go out with a whimper. We need to knock it out of the park one more time.
What's that?
I'm just gonna play a tune, and whatever comes to your mind, you just talk about when I play it. Okay? Okay.
I'm not quite.
I'm gonna play music to you.
Yep.
Through the headphones, and you just say whatever comes to your mind. We're just gonna talk about it. See if it brings back any memories and stuff.
Oh, okay.
You ready for this?
Yeah. It's good that I took the vibrato out.
You know that's from, right? That's early, right? That's your first album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember that time at all? Does that bring back any memories?
Yeah, for sure.
What does that conjure for you? What do you think of? Like Jeffrey, or what happens?
Oh yeah, just Jeffrey, myself, and
Jay.
Yeah.
When I first met Jay, he had a rock band, and he was a grade below me, but I used to go to his gigs, and it was super fun to go see original music by a band of guys from the high school.
Jeffrey and I were big rock fans. There was a lot of influences from all sorts of different bands.
I was born in Scotland, lived there till I was 9, and then we immigrated, and it suddenly came flooding back to me how much I really did love the old traditional music from Scotland.
The Celtic aspect was just kind of starting to come into play. And Jeff and I kind of explored putting some of those ideas together.
There was a bunch of them. They'd hang out on a summer day and play music in the backyard.
So we started getting together, and I was really nervous because, Jay was a proper musician, and I just knew like 10 or 12 little Irish tunes.
They'd need someone to do a beer run, and they'd always send Jeffrey because they thought they'd all be rock stars, and they didn't want someone playing the penny whistle.
And around that time, my wife Allison was in theater school here in Vancouver, and John was in her theater school class.
I kept going home and saying to Jeffrey, there's a guy in my class who can really, really sing.
A friend of mine was doing some booking at Whistler, and I got a gig one weekend.
And we said to John, you gotta come. It's just gonna be Jay and I. Just come along and we'll figure it out on the spot.
We got there, and I just thought, man, this guy can sing.
That was it.
We got a little write-up in the paper, and that was really how it began. Just as simple as that little trip to Whistler.
John brought such a different dynamic to the group because he was all about theater.
I don't know anybody else like John, a true artist. He eats like an artist. He walks down the street like an artist. He's always absorbing his environment, completely unique.
We had reams of ridiculous names and decided we were calling ourselves Eavesdropper based on a jig that we had played.
Did you used to sneak alcohol in there? Because it was no alcohol. Remember?
We did what we could.
It was constantly mispronounced and written up wrong. We were actually in print called the Eavesdroppings.
Eavesdroppings? No, I did not. Didn't like that name.
And we thought, okay, that's it. This has to change. We had a friend of Jeff's at the time, Dougie MacLean, singer-songwriter from Scotland, who was saying, well, you got to give some spirit to what's happening out here. It should be something like, Spirit of the West Coast or Spirit of the West. And we thought, okay, that's a good album title. And the more we sat with it, that weekend, literally, we became Spirit of the West.
I didn't like Spirit of the West either. I thought it sounded like a cowboy band.
But that's kind of how it began. And the first and foremost goal was to play for free beer. It really was. Like, we just thought, man, if we could get beer for nothing, that just felt like the big time.
It's a beer drinking band, for sure. That was our one vice, beer.
I still love walking into a place and there's a bunch of beer and food in the dressing room. It's still just like, all right.
When we went in to do the first recording, we had a number of tunes that ended up being on the first album. One was called The Only Child. It was about Jeff's mom, and we weren't quite sure how that was going to fit in with the rest of the tunes. And John came in and just... John came in and he just, his delivery.
And you're wearing your Sunday best. When the lessons are over, well, he's never late.
What he's known for is a glorious voice.
He's just fantastic singer.
When all the children have grown up and gone to seek what adulthood might bring, we're the only
knew that it was going to be something special. We were all kind of unified and working towards doing something different.
Do you remember recording that at all, John?
I didn't even know it existed.
John and Jeffrey had a marvelous connection right away. They clicked with humor, with a love for language, which I think is what makes them such a great songwriting team.
Early on, we were able to say to each other, I don't like that, and not be offended. It wouldn't be like, oh, fuck you, you know? So we got over all like kind of ego stuff with the writing. Our goal was just to make the song as good as it could be.
We wanted to do our own songs, so that's what we did.
We loved using jigs and reels as opposed to guitar solos, mostly because neither one of us could play a guitar solo.
Jeffrey's got a very powerful bullshit detector, and if anything's a little bit too rehearsed or sentimental, he just puts his foot down.
Yeah, it was one of those great bonds.
They have a secret communication. Jeffrey and John have always been like brothers.
I heard about John's diagnosis about a year ago. I was on the road in the Maritimes with the Irish Rovers, and I got a message to phone John and Jill, and I called them. I guess we were all hoping it might have been some post-trauma from the cancer that he'd gone through.
Jeffrey got this diagnosis of Crohn's disease, and a very short while after that, John started to get the exact same symptoms.
John was playing Thénardier in Les Mis. He had stomach problems.
He didn't want anybody in the company to know. He didn't want to get anybody upset. He wasn't asking for any sympathy.
Yeah, I found out I had that colorectal cancer. But it was and it wasn't a bad thing in the end, I guess.
The aftermath of his surgery was long, and seeing him, lose all that weight and having to build himself back up, it's scary.
You're in the hospital. You're so fucking vulnerable. It's actually so powerful too.
Thank you for the phone calls, the flowers, the dinners and the cards. Thank you for the kind words, black humor and the plums from your yard.
I realized that I want to do something with this. I just don't want to be atrophying in this hospital. I want to make music out of this.
I'm the kid that they cut apart, stitched back up, then grew a softer heart. I grew a real soft heart. Here come the black crows to fly past my windows. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
9 miles home and we're walking, we are bound, and we're good old boys. We come from the North Shore, drinkers and carousers, the likes you've never seen.
Spirit of the West were a total anomaly. Celtic music hadn't made it into the clubs that way. It wasn't like it is now. It's the way it is now because of them.
I'm all right, Jack, and how about you? Wanna catch me away, let's roll it through.
I just remember them coming on my deck when I was living in this van, and just, 3 young guys, really energetic. I was not a huge traditional folk guy, but they turned me on to a bunch of stuff, and I just went on from there.
For a long time in the 80s, the only manager in town was Bruce Allen. I had these big successes with BTO, Loverboy, and Brian Adams.
Bruce Allen, Sam Feldman, they were the established business. I mean, they had successful artists.
We were so different. We were just anti all that. There needed to be some new things coming in.
Janet Forsyth was our manager. And Janet also happened to run the Savoy and the Railway Club.
We were the first real full-time venue for original bands. Spear of the West first started at the Railway Club, just doing a small show, and things kind of took off.
This is our station in the heart of town.
People would just come and go, what is this? It's three guys. What is that drum the guy's holding? And then there'd be these historical anecdotes in the songs that I had no idea about.
No one was doing what they were doing with that sound that they were doing.
You can't compare them to any other band on the scene in the 80s.
Their music wasn't filtered by trying to be formulaic for the purpose of getting on the radio.
I'd heard about them through an ex-girlfriend who told me about this West Coast band that had a real West Coast sound. And this guy had a really great voice, and I should meet them.
Hugh, he's just always so inventive. Probably the best player I've ever heard.
He's just always been a mad scientist.
Hugh lived with Jeffrey and myself for a short while. I remember one time he came home with an accordion. And I said, Hugh, I didn't know you played the accordion. He said, I don't yet. And then he dismantled the accordion and looked at it, and then he put it back together and played it.
I remember the first cross-country tour they did. I got this 15-passenger van, and I financed it myself. Hugh helped me pick it out.
In order to become a relatively successful Canadian band, you have to do these crazy long drives between cities that are really far apart. And usually the best touring is in February.
2 hours into the trip, they phoned me, and the van is leaking oil, like really badly. And by the time they got to Calgary, the van blew up. I remember and thinking, oh my God. But the word got out.
I joined the band in '97, and I noticed that he was forgetful back then. He's always been the forgetful guy.
Even a number of years ago would be like a reluctance to relearn songs that we hadn't done in a long time that would be cool to do.
At that point, I was backstage tuning guitars for John and stage teching. It started to become part of my job that when I would hand John a guitar, I would tell him what song was coming next because he'd start losing track of the set list.
Ecstasy's a pill and not a stolen kiss.
We still thought he was just like not coming out of the cancer. Like it was almost like the anesthetic never left, right?
He was having to use his notes. He couldn't get off book, you know. He always had to have the paper in his hand.
Touch a falling star, falling star. He's back behind the bar, back behind the bar. He'll walk you to your car, kiss you in your car.
They put him on an anti-anxiety medication because you don't think this is happening to this 50-year-old man.
Character is vinegar without the piss. I just fucked up the line.
Yeah, what happened to Eddie Shore?
What's that?
What happened to Helmetless?
I know, that's right, thank you. Ecstasies.
We all knew that we were up against something really serious, and he, like, you know, you could just see that panic look show up on his face.
Character is vinegar without the piss. And a pound. No, see, I'm going to the. What is it, Andy?
Eddie shot Eddie.
Oh,
Helmetless.
Oh, fuck me. Ecstasies, a pill, and not a stolen kiss. And character is, no, it's not Eddie Shack.
Between sound check and showtime, he would bring the guitar back to the hotel, and it seemed strange to me I'd be laying there watching a hockey game or something, and I could hear just through the wall him practicing the songs, and it never really seemed to help him.
Nobody would have noticed.
I noticed.
And then it started to become more common that John would just, at some point in a song, lose track of what was happening, and he would hand me his guitar, and I would just run out and just, you know, play as best I could. I'd try to pick up the slack.
I can't hear you. If you're gonna be a prompter, you have to be like really close. To the chorus. It's the new normal. The new normal. The old way was okay, but this is the new day. It's the new normal. The new normal. The old day was my way, but this here is your day. Hooray!
We played a little gig in Castlegar, and Vince and I happened to be driving home together, and Vince brought it up that he thought there was something more serious than just forgetfulness or, you know, a mental block.
I did call John about it one time and asked him, you know, like, what's going on? Is this an anxiety thing? And he said, well, I'm gonna have to go and see my doctor.
I first met him back in October of 2012, and at that visit actually he came in unaccompanied. And even at that time, I mean, one thing that impacted me was his own experience of what is going on and his acknowledgement that things were not right. But it was concerned not just about how it impacted him, but he was most concerned about how everybody else was dealing with it. You know, not performing in the way he should. He was worried about his wife, his children.
I was in Toronto at the time, and my brother had called me and he had said, Hattie, something's wrong. There's Post-it notes everywhere. The house is a mess. Dad doesn't know what day it is. He can't point out anything on the calendar.
Our family spent time together every summer since our kids were born. I noticed it through the summer, and something was off.
I thought he might be on some kind of mood medication or something, because just a little bit slower and a little tiny bit of the gazing off. Just, you know, little stuff, but you could tell something wasn't right, yeah.
It was actually only about 8 months after the first appointment that I saw John again. I think he needed time to let all of this digest, and this is when Jill attended the appointment with him.
Like, I can't even tell you that coming to this clinic the first time, like, I almost wanted to throw up. So did John. It was so horrific. It was so like, this can't be happening. We can't be walking into the Alzheimer's clinic. It's just too awful to absorb.
The published guidelines say, well, you've got to do a bunch of blood tests, you've got to do a physical exam, you've got to make sure there isn't something else going on.
Typically, we look at the history, the testimony of what a person's experiencing, as well as people who know John well, who are able to describe what they're observing going on. And then vascular blood flow type studies, structural imaging such as MRI scans. And again, that was to rule out other conditions.
But once having done that, the awful truth of the matter is, if you score significantly lower than normal on those tests, and if the deterioration is gradual and relentless, it's Alzheimer's disease 99.9% of the time.
Played a game in my younger life.
It was myself, it was John and Jill, as well as a very close personal friend. And so with that team around him, that's when the diagnosis was communicated.
Alone to fight, figure out if that felt right. I think we got the safer life.
And he was obviously emotional, but he did comment that he wasn't necessarily surprised by the diagnosis.
I think we let led the safer lives when we played around with knives. Yeah. It's a struggle. You know, and I know I'm not the only kid in the block that has it, but
I was sitting in the school parking lot waiting to pick up my son, and Johnny called me on the cell phone. Hey, John. He said, I got some news for you. And I just went, oh my God.
The average progression, 10 years from first inkling to nonverbal staring at the ceiling.
You know, I went home and I told my wife, Merm, and I crawled into bed and wept for an hour.
Jill phoned me and told us, yeah. John went to the races with him one weekend, and he thought that he told me then, but he didn't. It's just the worst guy could happen to kind of thing, yeah, if you know what I mean. Somebody who lives to communicate with people.
It really knocked me for a loop. I really didn't think it was going to be that, but that's what we're left with.
it's a tough thing to go through. And I'm, you know, fortunate to have my friends.
You'll have to excuse me, I am not at my best. I've been gone for a month. I've been drunk since I left.
Home for Arrest. It was really a poem at first. I remember giving it to John, and I didn't play very much guitar then, so I kind of relied on him to kind of come up with the guitar part. And then we got the idea of adding in some Irish reels and just making it into a really ripping song.
We arrived in December and London was cold. We stayed in the...
In Canada, 90% of the people would recognize Home for Arrest. It's an important part of their college years, their high school years in my case, and that's a big deal.
The tour that spawned that song was our first time over, and that was intense.
I've been drunk since I left, and these so-called vacations will soon be my death. I'm so sick from the drink, I need home for a rest.
We booked 6 weeks in the UK without an agent, and we really ended up playing about 3 or 4 gigs.
Because it wasn't the best arranged tour ever.
We spent most of the time just drinking in the bars.
That's exactly what we did. We just kind of went to the bars and...
It was such a novelty to start drinking at 11. So they did.
You know, the end of the chorus of the song is we need home for a rest because we're just exhausted from having a good time.
These so-called vacations will soon be my death. I'm so sick from the drink, I need home for a rest. Take me
I just remember being so shocked when I saw him at the airport. That is the chubbiest he has ever been.
I went up to him and I poked him and I said, what? Like, oh my God.
No doubt about it. Every time I go to Europe, I come back with either a schnitzel baby or a fish and chip baby or something. Twins this time.
The individuality of what they're doing was inconceivable to the music industry.
You definitely had an era where the business was controlled by radio and record companies, and they were looking for certain formulas that Spirit of the West didn't really fall into.
The difference between being on the bottom or the top is you fight for what you have, they fight for what you've got.
They had to transcend that. They had to prove that they're more than a folk band.
What Spirit did was more about crowd participation and hoisting the pint and everybody gang vocaling with you and cheering. Why wouldn't you go on St. Paddy's Day to the Commodore? It's a life-affirming thing. And A&R guys aren't going to necessarily notice that phenomenon until they walk into the room.
They were playing the folk clubs, and we got the cover of the Georgia Strait, and I was just so excited. You know, the buzz started to happen. And then all of a sudden, the Commodore, and we sold it out. They're going to start taking notice if you can sell out a 1,000-seat venue.
And when the A&R guys realized the songs are really good, then maybe that's when the penny dropped.
I think we all want to know what's going on in an Alzheimer's person's brain. We want to understand it. And they are not very good at articulating what it's like.
I'm writing with my wife now. She's writing a play and based around what Jill and I are going through.
If he could explain it and I could write it down, it would be so great because this bridge of understanding would be built. And that was the impulse.
You would think Jill writing a play about a couple dealing with the diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's would be like pouring vinegar on a cut or salt on the wound. But at the same time, I also watch her get to escape her world for those 3 hours once a week where she's a writer. She isn't dealing with all the doctors and the drugs and the special diets and the scheduling and all that stuff. And I think it's incredibly healthy for her.
I've been writing the songs, and so that, you know, when the play's ready, I'll be able to plop them in there. And yeah.
I ask him, you know, like, can you understand what's going on? And he says, yes, he can understand it, but he can't access the language. I mean, I feel like I captured the best I could.
You know what scares me? The numbness. That's what I'm afraid of. That I could slip into it and I won't be able to dig myself out. It just creeps up on me. A numbing white fog. I don't need to be reminded about what Alzheimer's is like. It's like a white wall. An empty white wall, nothing else. That's what it's like a white wall. That's the cloud in my head. That's what it feels like. Nothingness. Blank. Empty. My brain doesn't say a thing. Nothing. That's how I feel.
I've never been in a band that I thought was going to play Massey Hall. It's actually beyond my dreams to play a venue of that caliber.
I don't know what the rest of the band is thinking, but the Massey Hall show is feeling like it's going to be a goodbye show.
I said, you please let us know if you find that this is too difficult for you. Every time he says he still loves it.
I'm pretty frightened of looking too far down the road. So even more than I don't want him to make mistakes, is I don't want him to not be able to do that.
Political was our first real song that was close to being any kind of radio-friendly song.
Jeff and I wrote it, and we realized we had something that was really good.
I was tired of being put right down.
We started doing showcases. We did one in New York. That got some interest from Warner. Warner Canada came and saw us there. I don't think they believed that we could draw 800 people as a folk band. And I think it was a gig at the Diamond Club in Toronto that really sealed the record deal.
I can remember being in Janet's living room when they signed for the big celebration of it. That wasn't a great contract, but at the time they didn't care. They were ecstatic.
We were really excited to get signed by Warner. It seemed to be what you had to do. And folk bands weren't getting signed a lot in the late 80s.
All along the way, Jeffrey was so happy about it all, really grateful. For Jeffrey, getting a record deal, it was like a kid in a candy shop.
Suddenly having our faces in record shops, and they were getting us interviews, and we sort of had a little dalliance with Much Music, all these things we never would have gotten on our own.
It meant they could do a video. It meant they could record.
Our profile just went way up. We'd done a tour of England with a band called The Wonder Stuff, and we played big venues, averaged about 5,000, and it just felt like we couldn't reach the back of the hall.
They came home and they said, we want to play stadiums too. We need a drummer.
They needed a little extra oomph and muscle.
Vince is an absolute forceful guy, and to bring a drummer like that into a little four-piece folk band was a very, very big deal.
Vince kicked our asses and made us a better band.
When they went electric, I loved it. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever heard. But I was hanging around with like a bunch of Birkenstock-wearing folk music fans. There was a lot of pushback.
It's hard to hear, a lot of loyal fans suddenly not really digging what you're doing as much. And that record was really difficult at first, going, there's no feel here. We were used to our own kind of meandering tempos. Vince didn't see eye to eye with the producer. And John and I were kind of left to finish that album up on our own.
Vince has a great big personality. He's opinionated, and he isn't afraid of sharing that opinion.
I was a total shit. But here's a good way to put it. John had strong opinions, but he was usually wrong. This was my take.
It felt like maybe we'd made a big mistake with this whole drums thing, but by the time of the next record, Faith Lift, we were really feeling it and playing much better together.
We never looked back because it was fun and powerful.
And having a lead single like Venice is Sinking was a great kickoff for the album. It featured accordion and acoustic guitars, and I think people kind of welcomed us back with that song.
Venice is sinking, I'm going under.
We actually did have a scheduled release with Elektra in the US, and they said they were releasing it. It was on their release charts, but they didn't spend a lot of money, so it wasn't a real release. But just in Buffalo, Detroit, and all those markets, I think Faith Lift sold 50,000 copies down there with no promotion, nothing.
Sexiest band in the cosmos, Spirit of the West.
College years were really exciting because those kids went crazy over the band.
It wasn't just colleges where things would get out of control. People were crowd surfing, and they'd fall down and they'd whack their heads and break their clavicles.
When crowds would, the mosh pit and throw each other into the crowd, people would get carried off in stretchers, and that freaked us out.
Spirit of the West was everything for me. They were energetic and they were exciting. I was a 12-year-old kid and I thought, well, I guess that's what I'll do with my life.
Playing to a sea of people of 50,000 or more is an odd sensation. And there's no real horizon there. It's just bodies.
I was completely skewed by my obsession with this band.
We started having a no crowd surfing policy.
It really bothered John a lot. His rule was nobody is ever going to leave a Spirit show a paraplegic. I mean, really, if that's the best you can guarantee. Health challenges, I have to get a kidney transplant.
It's a tough one. Diabetes and then kidney failure.
At this point, this machine is keeping me alive.
There's no energy before or after the shows, right? He's saving it up. So there's just enough to put 90 minutes on stage. I mean, he's a warrior.
Vince had a donor lined up, a very good friend of his, and that was the most wonderful thing, but that fell through.
It's so Spinal Tap. I'm diabetic. Jeff has Crohn's disease. John had colorectal cancer. And then me with my chronic kidney failure. John, of course, with the Alzheimer's. And then Hugh with his multiple personalities. That's just in fun, of course. Oh, and Tobin, 40 years old, and he has gout. He has gout.
I sent them all an email and said, hey, you guys, you think you've got it rough. I've got the gout. It was quite humorous.
So Matthew Harder at this point is in the crosshairs so seriously.
Do I have reason to worry about my health? Yeah, obviously. Clearly not a good team to work for. They're you know, it's dangerous.
Our star was rising. We just felt we had to accept everything. And sometimes that meant flying over to England, doing a week there, coming back to open for Melissa Etheridge in Toronto, back to England to carry on with this tour. And it got to be a real grind.
If we wanted to push things past Canadian Gold or Canadian Platinum, we would have had to go on the road for, instead of weeks at a time, months at a time, and do the kind of touring where you can't tell your families when you're going to be home exactly because you don't really know.
I had a sick firstborn, and my life was about cleaning up puke and putting babies to bed and hospital runs. And Jeffrey would phone home, and literally one night it was, guess who I met last night? Leonard Cohen. Yeah, it was really hard once the kids were arriving.
John had the lowest threshold for being away from home. He came in with the absolute strict dictum that 3 weeks was the maximum we could be away in one stretch.
Archie's going, oh God, I'm so tired. And you're there fooling around with those really cool people. And I'm changing dirty diapers. I hate you. Don't phone again.
No matter how much you want to have that success, the babies were arriving fast and furious, and it was simply too hard.
And we made a conscious decision to not do that, even though we knew it was going to be basically deflating the Zodiac.
You have to have a lot of drive and passion towards that one goal. And unfortunately, that can wreak havoc on having a balance in your life family-wise. So some people just say, you know what, fuck it, I want to have that balance and hope that I get as far as I possibly can.
We call it the Spirit family. They are my family. I can call them on any day, and we can laugh together and cry together. We were sitting around Vince's table last month, and Vince gave a big toast, and he just said, I've wiped your butt, and I've wiped your butt, and I've wiped your butt. There's about 7 of us whose butts Vince had wiped.
We did a video for Tell Me What I Think. It's very cool.
Commercial radio really wasn't playing these artists at first. It was video that actually broke these artists. MTV, Much Music, that changed the game. People would actually sit in front of a television waiting for a video that they liked to come on.
Mike Peters, who dealt with Much Music back there, and called me and said, oh, this is fantastic. It's a, amazing video, and blah, blah, blah. And so we're all, waiting. Mike calls me and says, they hated it. They think it's creepy. They just don't like it. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it, because we really were counting on it.
There were no cuts in it at all. So groundbreaking in that sense, but it went over like a fart in a spacesuit.
Kim Cook was the A&R person. He was devastated. I was devastated. The band, I don't remember if they were that devastated. So we thought, well, we've got to do another video. So they decided they wanted to use Two-Headed. That was the next single. And Kim says, well, we got to, figure out a new concept for this. And John's like, no, we'll get it right this time. And then the video gets shot, and it's basically the same video. Much Music saw it, hated it, and that was kind of the end of our video budget.
And we'd also like to thank you for coming here tonight and missing out on the absolutely fabulous Much Music Video Awards. I know it was a difficult choice for all of you.
So some artists push back and break through. And if they break all the way through, they can do whatever they want, and everyone follows them along. But if they haven't broken through, gatekeepers can fuck you up.
Now in health headlines, a shocking diagnosis for one of BC's most popular musicians. John Mann, the front man for the band Spirit of the West, has revealed he has early onset Alzheimer's disease. He's only 51 years old.
Johnny coming out to tell people that he has this horrible disease, it takes massive courage. The fear is the work will completely dry up, that no one will trust that you can do the work. And it's been the opposite. People have stepped up.
I just thought, geez, we can hope that people will be behind us, but this has been an absolute groundswell of love and support. I'm very impressed with the goodness of people.
It's just been a massive deluge of emails coming in. And they're all so beautiful.
When people found out about John, I listened to the CBC. I always have it on in my kitchen, and people were writing in their anecdotes about their coming in contact with John or going to spirit shows. That's the legacy, is the contact they made with people and where their music fits into other people's lives. When you actually hear it coming back in waves, it's massive.
I think the fact that people know now is also to our benefit and on our side.
My dad's always said this, he doesn't have anything to hide. He's not ashamed of it. And in a way, it was limiting him more when people didn't know.
If it gets to the point where he is losing the melodies, then we have to really look at it. But right now, that's not a problem.
There is something to be said about how music itself taps into different areas of the brain. Melodies might be a bit better preserved. So I think it's a combination of innate talent plus also an overlearned sort of activity that he's done time and time again, which means that he can play that melody without having to give it a second thought.
Cognitive reserve doesn't sound as poetic, but I believe it's a beautiful thing that he gave himself that much music, or that much came to him, that it's going to stay with him.
The work is still there, and people are really trying hard to put in all the systems to let him play as long as he can.
There were some gigs where he forgot large chunks of lyrics, and we knew something had to be done, or we wouldn't be able to continue along.
The simple answer is the drugs don't work. The population studies are unimpressive.
What the drugs do is they kind of delay symptoms, and then eventually the drug doesn't work for you anymore and you kind of decline, and we saw that happening for my dad.
I mean, I feel sorry for our doctor. They're certainly doing everything they possibly can for John. I know that. It's just, there isn't anything.
So I talked briefly with Vince about the idea of doing some sort of teleprompter type thing.
Tobin actually called me and said, look, I've got this idea. John needs a teleprompter of sorts, and we can do it with 2 iPads.
I'd heard about some pedals that you could use to turn pages, and so I researched a bunch of different apps and to see if there were any that would kind of fit the bill.
One talks to the other, and they're triggered with a foot pedal, and it scrolls through all the lyrics. And he said, oh, I'll do that with my foot. And I'm going, okay, so let me get this straight. You're playing accordion, you're playing piano, you're playing bass, and then you're going to be doing John's lyrics all the while.
I hadn't even really told John about this. Went to John's house and we had a rehearsal where I was just playing guitar and he was singing along with it.
I couldn't even believe it when he said, yeah, no, I can do it, I can do this. And he basically set that whole thing up.
And the rehearsal went very well. He was very happy and very relieved.
He's an incredible, incredible guy. Quiet, but really great.
And the next day we had the show, and a huge weight was lifted off the whole band. That was a big turning point. Everyone felt so much more comfortable.
Mr. John Fraser Mann singing for you tonight.
Yeah. Where are we here?
So there was no anxiety for quite some time. The anxiety, however, has come back now because it is getting harder, where even the iPad doesn't quite cut it.
I'd love to leave you with this. No? Oh my God. There we go. Alzheimer's. It's, yeah. You have, it's an iPad, and there's I have an, yeah, and then you just, well, I don't know.
It is hard to see John performing the way he is, to see John sort of hunched over an iPad and just clutching his microphone and singing.
I couldn't believe the photo that girl sent. You were literally like this by the end of the night. You kept pulling your mic stand further and further down.
There's this thing.
No kidding.
At his peak, he was an untouchably excellent singer and frontman. Like, I don't know who said it, but maybe Freddie Mercury was in that league for sheer physical charisma, but very few others.
He's now at the point where he's not even sure where in the verse he should be singing. I also think he's having a tough time reading in general, so that compounded with the fact that, that's making it worse for sure.
John just becomes more and more quiet. So when he can't communicate a thought to you, it makes him sad. So quite often we'll go a whole day where he will hardly speak at all.
It's easy for him to just kind of fade, I think, because he works so hard to be engaged and to be there, and he still tries to be my dad. I mean, he doesn't have to try, but he's who I go to for advice, and yeah, it's different now. I don't have that voice.
Another weird thing I think for people is that now I have to do all of the talking.
I want to send this song out tonight to any nurses in the audience.
Because John's just not really comfortable doing intros himself anymore.
And I speak for all of us here. We've all needed you very much in the last few years.
Absolutely.
We owe an incredible debt to the nurses of Canada.
Jeffrey's basically our front man now. He's up there at the microphone taking over the banter.
Yeah, and it's a very funny dynamic now because lots of times Jeff would go a whole show without speaking. And now that role has totally switched with the two of them.
I lost both of my grandparents to Alzheimer's, so I feel like I'm just watching the same tape play again.
No great war, no great depression.
It's pretty obvious that it's moving quickly now.
Nothing ever dropped.
I would be okay with getting on the stage at Massey Hall and playing our last show. I could make peace with that.
We had one more record left to do for WIA, for Warner Music Canada, and we thought, well, let's try and get as much out of them as we can and insist that we want to go to the UK to make a record. And we put a lot of pressure on them that it had to be a residential studio where we lived there, waking up there and walking down this laneway with a cup of tea to this old cider mill where the studio was. It was a dream come true.
And we stumbled down to the pub after every single day. I was leading the charge on the way down to... I just loved every bloody second of it.
Soon after I joined the band, they recorded Weights and Measures, and it hadn't even been released yet, but they'd finished mixing it, and they had a cassette, and they put it on in our rental car, and I was blown away.
In terms of original material and originality of sound, I think Weights and Measures would be the pinnacle, which is kind of ironic because it went direct to delete.
Unfortunately, the record never really was a big success.
My memory was Jeffrey and John feeling quite burnt out by that cycle of you make the album, you tour the album, you write the album, and that feeling like you were responsible for everybody's livelihood.
We got in debt with the record company like most bands do because you get money for touring, but it's all recoupable. Same with videos. You owe them another 35 grand for that, and it just all adds up.
This is your advance, but now we need the payback for doing the video and all the costs of making the album and stuff, and so they were getting pennies an album.
Like 30 years of $0. I don't know what a royalty check looks like.
You realize pretty fast that after getting those awards that that's really all you're going to get from it, and the balance sheet is still red.
There was that big push, if we could only get on radio, then we'd see some bucks, and they never really had a big radio hit.
Even when you think about it, Home for Arrest is never a massive radio hit.
I mean, the thing is I was not experienced enough either, and my lawyer, our lawyer, really didn't help us with that.
From record company to record company, there was kind of, a slightly different version of the same deal.
There were a lot of very good people that worked for us there. We remained friends with them all. I think they gave us as much oomph as they could. It just kind of faded out.
It's really tough business. If you have a big song, you get some kind of residual money for many years afterwards, but it's big means big.
We are going to Switzerland on January 3rd for this alternative trial of a liver enzyme called GC-MAF. They will inject him with the GC-MAF. They just don't know if it will help Alzheimer's or not. I feel like it's up to me to get John in to meet that doctor, do that, find out about that experimental drug. And if I don't do it soon, he's gonna be gone. John doesn't have 6 months. He doesn't have time to wait for people to find out if it's safe.
Alzheimer's is a terminal diagnosis. There's really no cure. It's a matter of not if, but when things are going to progressively worsen. So if something's going to be developed, but it's only going to be available 5 or 10 years from now, that doesn't help the person today.
The doctor was surprisingly excited about the opportunity for John to go there because in the medical system here, he has nothing that he can offer John, absolutely nothing.
So when John and Jill chose to pursue an opportunity that had presented itself to them, it's something that I said, okay, I will facilitate that.
I'm gonna do the clock test. For me, it's like nearly impossible.
But they need the test as a baseline of his before.
The space relation stuff and the drawing of the clock are so-called tests of executive function. And executive function is a part of what the frontal lobes do. It's planning and organizing a somewhat complex task. You say, would you draw a clock? So they draw a circle and they start putting the numbers on. And instead of going 12, 6, 3, 9, and then filling in the others, they start around the circle and they run out of space, or they get off to the side because they kind of can't hold in mind what the task is while they're doing it and get on to the next thing.
What month? What year? Yeah.
You probably could tell the year.
Pardon me?
Could you tell the year?
No.
Oh, shit.
It's totally blanking. That was the one I was blanking with.
So we should not be surprised if he is unable to prepare a sandwich in the kitchen. Demented person gets lost in the detail. Well, what was I doing?
Quitting my job was definitely the right decision. There's a lot of fear about finances too around Alzheimer's, and I have a lot of fears. I'd say I'm generally a fearful person anyway, but it got to a point where I couldn't do the things for John that John needed to be done.
Let's say you're not deaf, you're not depressed, you're not on a bunch of stupid drugs, English is your first language, you've had a career that shows reasonable intelligence, and you get 22 out of 30 on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It's dementia.
So he'll be in Switzerland for 3 weeks, and then he'll do the testing then when he comes back. And yeah, it's one way of showing if there's any difference. I guess I'm hoping it gives him a boost, that it will just kind of bump things up a bit for a while. Maybe this stops the decline for a year, and a year from now, there's maybe one more thing that can bump it up for another year. It's heartbreaking what John's lost, but there's still a lot of John here.
It's difficult because you can't not try if it's out there, because what goes along with that is giving up that hope. And I don't know if any of us are ready to do that yet.
You might remember everything, but I have the power to forget. And it's a sad thing, my broken brain. It tries so hard, I feel its pain. And I'll never call it stupid, 'cause it really tries so hard. But I guess we just drew the last card. Where's the hope? How to cope? How to swing on a rope? Where's the hope? Where to cope? How to swing on a rope? And I'll never call it stupid, 'cause it really tries so hard. But I guess we just drew the last card.
So we've gone through all of Switzerland, all that expense, all that expenditure of hope and everything, all that time, and come back and to see that John's not doing any better. Even actually his test result today was 17 as opposed to 18.
The unfortunate thing is that I think that in the time that I have known him, even in that short time, I have myself noticed a progressive change. And in that regard, it seems to be very rapid.
Out of those 30-point tests, it's on average, it's 3 points per year, 10 years from beginning to end. And again, there's a bell curve around that, but that's on average. So he's halfway there.
I have a different kind of feeling about hope now. I'm not pro-hope right now. I don't want to invest in hope. I just don't want to do that to myself anymore.
I've been in love with Jill for a long time, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have her in my life, because if I didn't, it would be I couldn't do it.
It's so important that we understand the relationship between music and Alzheimer's and how it can help people through these times.
Let's get things started. Please welcome to the stage, from Spirit of the West,
John Mann.
Thank you, rock fans.
There isn't a known root cause. It's not hereditary, it's not autoimmune, it's not infectious, it's not traumatic. At least it's not entirely any of those things. So it's something, but we don't know what it is. And there's no cure.
A couple of pills in a small Dixie cup, then one sharp prick, and the night's looking up, and my eyes roll back, and my words get thick. No time to count backwards. It happens so quickly.
John Mann and his
And
friends.
I'm sinking down through these hospital sheets that never stay tucked in or cover my feet. And I can walk on the water, I talk underwater, I'm a ghost. You know, I feel like I feel that, you know, this could go on forever, although I know it won't. I'm floating above the ground. I don't ever want to wake up and come around.
I don't want him to be remembered for a final performance. I don't. So unless it's a really fucking awesome one. So I hope it's awesome.
I stare into the half-cut eyes of my disappointed date, who's been waiting for the countdown. He's trying to stay awake so he can force his breath upon me, bend with the doorways into drinking.
That's a bugbear. Let's go back so you can get that.
Thank you.
And it's just amazing that it's right there.
Yeah, you could ping a rock off its
Yeah.
roof.
Oh, yeah.
You really could.
Let's do that. Let my chord become
The only time you leave that hanging is at the end. But in the early choruses, you sing it just straight through.
I think we're all starting to feel like we're kind of propping Johnny up to a point where it's starting to lose dignity.
People don't even know what it takes for my dad to get on stage. My mom's gotta wake him up. He's gotta have his coffee. She's gotta take him for a run. He's gotta have the right food. He's gotta get to rehearsal. She picks out an outfit for my dad to wear that night. She does everything for him.
I'll know when it's time for me to kind of throw in the towel.
Welcome to Massey Hall. To say that tonight is a special evening is a real understatement, because we're here to celebrate the legendary Vancouver band Spirit of the West. Spirit of the West provided the soundtrack to many of our lives, and we know that tonight's a really important night for them. And we know it's a really important night for all of us here too as well.
I feel very fortunate because I know that I could phone any one of my musician brothers. I know they would come.
Please welcome to the stage, Spirit of the West.
Thank you.
We love you.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how happy we are to be here. So this is honestly really a thrill for us. All right, we're going to start with this little song. You might recognize this.
Putting yourself in the position of somebody who's got this disease, you know, what do you really hope for? Well, you hope for somebody to just make you feel as though you're worthwhile, and we all need that. But boy, when you get disabled in that awful, devastating way, you need it more than ever.
He's done such a majestic job getting on with it. Bravest dude in the world.
Some of the most important things that have ever been said to me in times of extreme personal chaos or tragedy have been said to me by John. It's a remarkable gift.
The right
Ladies and gentlemen, John Mann, the most courageous person I know.
I might have bad days, but then I just start playing my guitar and then, shake it off.
As long as he's enjoying himself still and he's not afraid of going on stage, we can keep doing it, to a point.
I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. And right now it's working.
Before we tears appear,
I'm amazed at what they achieved. Unfortunately, it's been cut too short, but it has been such an adventure.
Thank you guys so much. We're going to leave you with this one. This has been the most awesome night ever.
you have to excuse me, I'm not at my best. I've been gone for a month. I've been drunk since I left.
The legacy of Spirit of the West. A lot of people will remember how important it was to them as they were growing up. That's the big thing. I'm very, very proud to have played a small part in it.
Their songs just stand for themselves. There's some beautiful songs, and lots of them.
I mean, in terms of a level of talent, both musically, vocally, and lyrically, they're as good as anyone.
I think Spirit of the West was pioneering, and John and Jeff are unbelievable songwriters. They were great live, and they had great personalities. They were a lot of fun.
They were special. They were unique. They were one of the first to fuse Celtic sound with a real sort of modern pop rock sound.
Within the band, there's a level of emotional empathy between us that is impossible to fabricate. It's just there.
It's been more than half my life now. 30 years of Spirit of the West. It opened up a lot of doors, a massive part of my life.
Spirit of the West, for me, is home, it's friends, and we support each other immensely.
beautiful.
Thank you, guys.
Wow. Spectacular. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, you guys. I just want to say something short to you. Is I'm going through with health issues, but I'll be there and move on. So, cheers.
John was over at the house and Jill was there as well. He asked me to play this song because it's his favourite song, he said, at that time. Victory was not mine to have, came to other men.
It's Paul.
No daring feats in foreign streets, no history-making pen. The ship I sailed was lost in fog, some distance from the coast. Of all the things I've lost this year, I miss my mind the most. When spring was young, I had a thirst for standing proud and tall. I drank the summers full of wine and fell right into fall. Winter's chill with vengeance came and proved a cruel host. Of all the things I've lost this year, I miss my mind the most. I broke my back on bottom's rack, like this my time was sold. Like every moment was the last, spend my fool's gold. Wasted now the passing years, of little I can boast. Of all the things I've lost this year, I miss my mind the most. The ship I sailed was lost in fog, some distance from the coast. Of all the things I've lost this year, I miss my mind the most. Of all the things I've lost this year, I miss my mind.